The complete and utter fraud that is Kari Lake was cross-examined before the United States Senate this week. She was just nominated by Donald Trump to become the ambassador to Jamaica. This was after she was effectively fired by a federal judge because a federal judge declared her appointment by Donald Trump when she was running the USAGM, the United States Agency for Global Media, which oversees Voices of America. The judge deemed her appointment to be wholly unlawful because guess what? She was never actually appointed. She was put there by Donald Trump to be a senior advisor in early 2025. Then she took on an acting deputy CEO role. They made up a fake position for her, and then she engaged in mass layoffs at Voices of America, including the main Farsi channel right before or leading up to Donald Trump's invasion of Iran. So we were completely and utterly unprepared as well to have the kind of media support there. But a federal judge ultimately made the ruling that she was unlawfully appointed from the outset. In any event, all of her actions were deemed null and void, including her mass terminations of like all the people who worked at Voice of America and who worked at USAGM. I mean, she gutted the whole agency and she gutted everybody that worked there. So then what did Donald Trump do? Well, he appointed her to become the ambassador to Jamaica. So she shows up at this hearing before the United States Senate. I'm just going to let her appearance speak for itself. I don't know if she was taking a dip in the reflecting pool by Donald Trump, but in any event, here's how she began, and then I'm going to show you what the cross-exam looked like. Let's share with you what she looked like at this hearing. Let's play it.
And third, advancing American economic interest. I will advocate for U.S. businesses' work to address trade barriers, such as Jamaica's long-standing restrictions on U.S. pork exports, and promote American investment, especially as Jamaica continues to rebuild.
Then she was cross-examined by Democratic Senator Tim Kaine, and he cross-examined her about her disgusting conduct during the 2024 Senate campaign when she lost to now Senator Ruben Gallego in Arizona.
And she's talking about, what are you doing? And she's studying algebra. And,
so what?
And it's like, it was always embarrassing for me to walk in. It's too young. 30 is like a perfect age.
Absolutely. She has enough life experience.
Until she's 35.
Yeah. Well, too much life experience.
What is it at 35, Howard? It's called checkout time.
Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the video. We put a lot of time into research, fact-checking, and making sure every story we bring you is informative and meaningful. As an independent channel, your support truly keeps this work going. So if you find value in our reporting, please take a second to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and help us reach more people with stories that matter. Your support means a lot, and it allows us to keep giving our best every single day. The single most revealing archive of Donald Trump's private thoughts, the place where, for almost 2 decades, he said the quiet parts out loud, over and over with the tape rolling, wasn't built by his enemies. It wasn't dug up by some investigative reporter. It wasn't leaked by a disgruntled aide. Donald Trump built it himself, on the radio, on Howard Stern's show. By choice, for 17 years. Because before he was president, before he was even really a politician, Donald Trump was one of Howard Stern's all-time favorite guests. He called in constantly. And Stern has said it plainly. On that show, Trump had, quote, no filter. He was, in Stern's words, an open book. He would say anything, and he did. For 17 years, he did. So when people talk about Howard Stern exposing Donald Trump, here's the truth of it. Stern barely had to lift a finger. He just had to keep the tapes. Because Trump exposed himself on the air again and again in his own voice, saying things that would later contradict everything he claimed to be. And that archive has become one of the most damning records of who this man actually is when he thinks he's just shooting the breeze. And then, years later, Howard Stern turned on him. The friend became a critic, and Donald Trump absolutely lost it. So today we're going to walk through all of it. The friendship, the secrets Trump handed over in his own words, the betrayal as Trump sees it, the meltdown, and then I'm going to bring you to what's happening right now, today, around Donald Trump. Because the theme of this entire story, the gap between what Trump reveals and what Trump hides, is playing out on the front pages this very afternoon. Let's get into it. First, you have to understand how close these two were, because it makes everything that came later land harder. Donald Trump started calling into the Howard Stern show back in the early 1990s, and he kept doing it.
She said that because Senator Gallego's father, who basically abandoned Gallego as a child, because his father was associated with cartels, and therefore Senator Gallego was captured by the cartels. And Senator Gallego told the story about being abandoned by his dad, about taking his mom's maiden name, about calling out his father's behavior. And so it was just like a disgusting thing to do. And then she's continued to attack Senator Gallego and saying, you're run by the cartels control you. I mean, it's just typical Kari Lake. I mean, she's so disgusting in her behavior, and she'll say all of these just heinous things, just lies and conspiracies and deranged things. And then you'll see at the hearing, as she's cross-examined by Senator Kaine, she refuses to retract. Watch as he cross-examines and grills her and shows why she should never be anywhere near any position. Even the ambassador of Jamaica, she shouldn't be near. Here, play this clip.
Ms. Lake accused one of our sitting colleagues of being controlled by the cartels. You had no evidence then, nor do you have any evidence now, that our colleague Senator Gallego is controlled by cartels, do you, Ms. Lake?
Well, we provided the receipts. The father was a high-level drug trafficker, trafficking hundreds of thousands.
You said that Ruben Gallego was controlled by the cartels. You provided no evidence. This was rated pants on fire, a lie. You had no evidence then, and you have no evidence now that Ruben Gallego is controlled by cartels. Isn't that right?
I thank you for the question, Senator Kaine. I do appreciate it. I don't know, and I'm not here to do reputational control or reputational
How about an apology to our colleague? If you made that claim he was controlled by cartels, and now you're saying you don't know what the facts are, then you're acknowledging that your charge was wrong. How about apologizing to our colleague?
I don't believe my charge was wrong. Ruben Gallego's father is a high-level
That's not the question I asked you.
He was a felon.
That's not the question. You asserted he was controlled by cartels. You had no evidence then. You have no evidence now. You're unwilling to admit it. And here's something that's even worse, Mr. Chair. That was during the heat of a campaign. Sometimes we say things during campaigns that we go too far. She's continued to repeat this as a sitting member of the Trump administration. A couple months ago, Ruben Gallego put out a tweet against the invasion of Venezuela. He didn't mention Ms. Lake. He just said he was against it. And she, at 2:35 in the morning, the following day responded, "You are a member of a Mexican cartel family. You are also a fraud. No one is surprised by your take." She's continuing to repeat a lie. She just told the committee she has no idea whether it's true or false, but she was glad to say it, and she won't retract it now. That should be disqualifying. Mr. Segar, I got a question for you.
Then you had Democratic Senator Chris Murphy from the great state of Connecticut cross-examining Kari Lake about getting rid of critical transmitters and getting rid of kind of critical technology based in Kuwait that could have been utilized in order to provide information to individuals in Iran in January, and thereafter. And on something as important as this, he also catches her lying under oath and basically committing perjury. Here, play this clip.
There was this very specific issue where staff were requesting access to U.S. transmitters in Kuwait that were necessary in order to broadcast into Iran. And you denied them access.
Donald Trump interview I had done. And in some ways, I felt it was unfair to Trump because, for example, they were fond of quoting that Donald Trump had said something to the effect that STDs were his personal Vietnam. But really, it was in a very joking scenario. He was not comparing his life to a Vietnam vet. It was ha, 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 and this and that. But when journalists took it and made it serious, I thought it was a little bit unfair. Having said that, though,
regularly for around 17 years, all the way up to roughly 2015, right when he launched his presidential campaign. This wasn't a one-off. This was a recurring character. Stern has said Trump was one of the biggest personalities he ever had on. Trump was at Stern's wedding. They ran in the same New York and Palm Beach social circles. For a long time, by Stern's own account, he had genuinely warm feelings for the guy. And on the show, Trump let it all hang out. That was the whole appeal. Stern would steer the conversation towards sex, money, women, family, fame, and Trump would just go. No handlers. No message discipline. No filter, as Stern put it. He'd answer anything. And he didn't just talk, he was a full-blown character in the Stern universe, tangled up in the show's running soap operas. There's a famous stretch where Trump got into a bitter, very public feud with one of Stern's regular guests, a gossip columnist named AJ Benzer, because Trump had, by the show's telling, stolen Benzer's girlfriend, the model Cara Young. The two of them went at it on the air, and the fight got so heated and so entertaining that Trump later called in to accept a joke award from the show for the best celebrity blow-up. That's how embedded he was. He wasn't a guest doing a press tour. He was a recurring star in Howard Stern's circus, calling in to brag about stealing a guy's girlfriend and collect a trophy for the drama. This was his natural habitat, which is exactly why he was so unguarded in it, and exactly why the tapes are so revealing. Here's the thing Stern has said that really captures it, looking back. The Donald Trump he saw later, in office, he said, "I didn't know this was him." Meaning the version of Trump on the radio, the loose, jokey, say-anything guy, was someone Stern thought he understood. And the version who became president was something Stern didn't recognize and didn't like. But here's the irony Stern himself has admitted. The way he helped Trump back in the day was by letting him come on and be a personality.
Transmitters, finally giving them access to one frequency when they needed multiple frequencies. You said that it was because the transmitters were down, that they were inoperable. That doesn't seem to be true. It seems, in fact, from all reports that those transmitters were available, and you were simply making a decision to limit the amount of capacity we had to broadcast into Iran. And you seem to have walked back your contentions that those transmitters were down. It seems like you weren't telling the truth. Can you tell us now whether those transmitters were actually inoperable or whether you were actually actively denying the ability for our staff who do this work to transmit information into Iran?
Thank you very much for that question. I appreciate it. First of all, we've given all funding to Radio Free Europe, Radio Free Asia. Every grantee that Radio Free Europe is the one that operates Radio Farda rather, and we've given them every single.
But talk to me about this. This is a very specific issue where there was a major problem because we weren't able to broadcast into Iran because you had denied access to these transmitters. You said it was because they were inoperable. They were not inoperable, correct?
We have had repairs done on them, so it could have been at a time when there were repairs done, but we weren't denying them.
You were definitive. You said that this was not a decision to deny them access, that they were inoperable. I mean, this committee can find the answer to this question pretty easily. You're always doing repairs on transmitters. Those transmitters were not inoperable, correct?
I will have to look into that. I don't know.
Well, but you said that you stated on the record that they were inoperable, whereas your staff contended that you were denying them access to the transmitters in order to limit the amount of information in Iran.
Radio Farda was doing a product and VOA Persia was doing a product, and we were using the 24 hours we had to put VOA, which is a government-owned entity, out on the airwaves in Iran. And you know, we have only 24 hours in the day. Unfortunately, sometimes I wish we had more, but we chose to put VOA.
I'm well over my time. I think your limitation of our ability to transmit information to Iran was egregious. It's made more egregious by the fact that you were not telling the truth about what was happening behind the scenes to limit our ability to tell an American story in Iran. And I will follow up for the record on this question of whether you were telling the truth about those transmitters being inoperable. Thank you, Mr.
More from his cross-examination right here.
So I heard you take credit for the current amount of programming in Iran. Was your decision to dismantle Radio Farsi and Radio Farda and the VOA Persia staff a mistake?
Thank you so much for that question, Senator Murphy. I appreciate it. RFE is who runs Radio Fardi. We run VOA Persia, and it is very much alive and well. We had great coverage. We went into surge mode when the attack happened, and we immediately brought in a huge team of folks to cover it. We actually covered the president's speech live with live translation so that the people of Iran could hear
but just
what was
really
happening.
clear, I'm not asking you to tell me what is happening now, and what I'm asking you, why did you fire?
She's 6 feet tall. She's got the best body.
She's hot.
What's the favorite thing you have in common with your father?
Either real estate or golf.
Donald, with your daughter?
Well, I was going to say sex, but I can't relate that.
Letting millions of people relate to him as a human being, like him or not. Howard Stern helped build the public Donald Trump, and he's had to live with that. So this isn't two strangers. This is a guy who helped make Trump, who has the receipts on Trump, turning around years later and saying, I was wrong about him, and let me tell you what I know. And here's why that carries real weight. Because Howard Stern isn't some lightweight, love him or hate him, the man has called himself the king of all media for decades, and he kind of earned it. He built one of the most listened to radio shows in American history, and underneath the shock jock reputation, Stern is widely regarded as one of the great long-form interviewers of his era, a guy who can sit with a famous, guarded person and slowly, patiently draw out the real human being underneath. He's talked about interviews where a star opened up about depression, about pain, about things they'd never said publicly, because Stern knew how to make them comfortable enough to be honest. That's a genuine skill, and it's the exact same skill that made Trump an open book for 17 years. Stern is a professional at getting people to drop their guard. Trump dropped his, on tape, more completely, and more often than almost any public figure alive. When a master interviewer tells you he got the real version of someone and has the recordings to prove it, that's worth listening to. Now let's talk about the secrets. And I want to start with the cleanest, most important one because it's not gossip, it's a straight up documented lie, and Stern's tape is the proof. The Iraq War. For years, as Donald Trump built his political identity, one of his central claims was that he had opposed the invasion of Iraq from the very beginning. He hammered this constantly. He used it to position himself as the wise outsider, the guy who saw through the disastrous war that the establishment cheered on. It was a cornerstone of his whole I have great judgment brand. There was just one problem. It wasn't true. And the proof was sitting right there in Howard Stern's archive. Because back in 2002, before the invasion, Trump was on Stern's show, and Stern asked him directly, "Are you for invading Iraq?" And Trump's answer was essentially, "Yeah, I guess so." He went along with it, he supported it, on tape, in his own voice, months before the war started.
What is happening now, and what I'm asking you, why did you fire or put on leave all of the VOA Persia staff? Why were we in a position where we had to reconstitute all of that? Do you concede that that was a mistake?
I don't think it was a mistake. I think that we were bringing things to statutory minimum, which is what the executive order mandated for us to do, and we had a small staff, but the minute this happened, we immediately surged and brought more people in. They call it breaking news mode, and anybody who works in journalism understands that you have a kind of a homeostasis level, and then when news breaks, you jump in.
So when this crisis passes, you will bring that staff back down to statutory minimums?
No, I think we're always assessing and reassessing and making sure that we're running things smoothly. But I listen to the folks in VOA. I don't run VOA. I work at the agency level, and I listen to the professionals there to what they need. And I think I know there are people here in this room who work at VOA who would tell you that every single thing they have asked for, we have provided.
Well, that's absolutely not true. That staff protested the devastating cuts. It was a mistake to dismantle our information operations in Iran, and your inability to concede that was a mistake suggests that we have not learned lessons, and perhaps when this crisis is gone, we will.
Now, I just want to contrast that so you can see the difference between how Democrats ask questions and how MAGA Republicans ask questions, and why elections actually matter. Because you have MAGA Republican Senator McCormick from Pennsylvania, Commonwealth. He doesn't cross-examine Kari Lake. He says, I just want to give you the opportunity to talk about the 2022 governor's race and the 2024 Senate race. You want to address that at all? And to be very clear, Carrie Lake conducted herself so disgustingly during those races. Remember all the lies and conspiracies and lawsuits and frivolous behavior that she engaged in. And this is to me why these MAGAs are so disgusting, and why they're so despicable. Because he gives her this layup, and then she's like, I was just fighting for election integrity and security, and that's all we can ask for right now. And I mean, that's what Donald Trump is doing. Again, just this behavior. This shouldn't be a political party thing. You're a loser. You lost in 2022. You lost in 2024. You took on a fake position at a critical agency, at the U.S. Agency for Global Media, which oversees Voice of America. Then you proceeded to fire everybody. Your whole life legacy is just being horrific as a human being. Just watch what she does, though. Play this clip.
So I'd like to just give you a minute to step back and give you the opportunity to speak in the case there's anything you'd like to address as it relates to your 2022 and 2024 elections.
On my show, and this is why he was great. There was no filter. I go, Donald, Angelina Jolie, she's one of the most beautiful actresses in the world. She's a 6. Now who says that? Most people, if they're having that thought, keep that pretty guarded. Not Donald. He was right into it.
I'll tell you the funniest is that I'll go backstage before a show.
Yes.
And everyone's getting dressed and ready and everything else. And, no men are anywhere. And I'm allowed to go in because I'm the owner of the pageant, and therefore I'm inspecting it. I'm inspecting. I want to make sure that
You're like
everything is
doctor.
good.
You're there.
Yeah, the dress. Is everyone okay? They're standing there with no clothes. Is everybody okay? And you see these incredible-looking women.
So when Trump spent years afterward insisting he'd been against it from day one, that Stern tape was the smoking gun. It didn't matter how many times he denied it. The recording existed. His own words from his own mouth on Howard Stern's show, flatly contradicting the story he was telling the entire country. That's what exposed means here. Not an insult, a receipt. A piece of tape that proved the man was rewriting his own history, and the only reason we have it is that Trump couldn't help himself on the radio 20-some years ago. That's the power of the Stern archive. It's a time machine to a version of Trump who wasn't being careful. And over, that careless version says things the careful, political version desperately wishes he could erase. And a lot of what's in that archive is genuinely ugly, and it became central to how a lot of the country came to see him. Across those 17 years, the tapes captured Trump making a long, documented string of crude and demeaning comments about women, rating their bodies, ranking celebrities by attractiveness, talking about sex in ways that, when they resurfaced during his campaigns, generated enormous controversy. Outlets went back and cataloged them. They became a kind of dossier of his attitudes, in his own words. And some of the most disturbing material involved his own family. In a 2006 interview, the conversation turned to his daughter Ivanka, and Trump made sexualized comments about her appearance. Comments that, when they resurfaced, a lot of people found deeply unsettling coming from a father about his own daughter. I'm not going to dwell on the specifics because the point isn't to wallow in it. The point is the pattern. This is a man who, when he thought it was just locker room radio, repeatedly talked about women, including the women in his own life, as objects to be rated and described. His defenders have always said it was shock radio, it was banter, it was a different era, don't take it seriously. And you can weigh that defense for yourself. But the words are real, they're on tape, and they form a record that his carefully managed political image was specifically designed to make you forget. And some of the archive is darker still. Comments about pageant contestants, about access to dressing rooms at events he owned, and other remarks that...
Can I have more than 5 minutes?
No, I don't know about that. But
actually, you don't want that probably. But thank you so much, Senator McCormick, for opening your schedule to me this week. I enjoyed meeting with you. And yes, in a family of 9, 8 girls, 1 boy, that I did learn diplomacy, because you have to, at the end of the day, and we didn't have a lot of means. We were pretty poor, although nobody ever told us that. We had to hop in bed and sleep with our sisters. We didn't have enough bedrooms. So you didn't want to take that fight or disagreement all that way to the next day. So I'm so honored to have grown up in a big family. Thank you very much. I felt that I ran incredible campaigns with the grassroots of Arizona firmly behind me. And I'm very proud of the way that I conducted myself and the way we ran those campaigns. As a newcomer to politics, I thought that this country was set up where an outsider could step into politics, but then I realized that Sometimes the political class doesn't want the outsiders, but that's okay. It was a great learning experience. I fought for fair and free elections in the courts for the people of Arizona, and I'm glad that the president is going to continue fighting for fair and free elections. I'm looking to the future, and what I want to do is to hone my skills. I want to take everything I've learned thus far and work at being the best diplomat and ambassador that the U.S. has ever sent to Jamaica, and I'm looking forward to that.
And then she was questioned by Jeanne Shaheen. And Jeanne Shaheen, Senator Shaheen from New Hampshire, I mean, she lays out the case against Kari Lake and Kari Lake's behavior. But then I just think that she kind of lets Kari Lake just go and ramble. I mean, I guess we can see that Kari Lake is, just beyond unqualified for anything. I mean, she should not be an ambassador to Jamaica. I mean, we shouldn't be rewarding these frauds. I'll let you judge this one for yourself. Let's play it.
You destroyed the Farsi language broadcasting ahead of President Trump's war in Iran. You cut the Spanish language services ahead of the administration's action in Venezuela. You put over 2,000 employees on leave, paying them not to do anything for months. And when my staff asked how much that cost taxpayers, you had no idea. Well, we know that keeping those personnel out of office and on administrative leave has cost American taxpayers $139.7 million. An independent audit found that your interpretation of the so-called statutory minimum standard on staffing caused the agency to violate the law.
In recent months have come roaring back into the conversation for reasons we're about to get to. I'm going to handle that part carefully and soberly because it intersects with a live, serious legal story. But hold the thought, the Stern tapes are the before. There's an after that's unfolding right now. But first, the falling out. Because for all those warm feelings, Howard Stern and Donald Trump ended up on opposite sides of a canyon. Stern is and has long been a liberal, a Democrat. And as Trump moved into politics, the distance between them grew. Stern wanted Hillary Clinton to win in 2020. He's talked about how he could have helped her the way he helped Trump, by humanizing her for his audience, but it didn't happen. And as Trump's presidency went on, Stern got more and more critical, more and more vocal. He even leaned all the way into the insult Trump's side throws at people like him. When the right started calling him woke, Stern didn't flinch. He embraced it. He said, basically, that he takes it as a compliment, that the opposite of woke is being asleep. That's a guy who's made his peace with where he stands. And then came the moment that really lit the fuse. October 2024. Just weeks before the election, Howard Stern sat down for a long interview with Vice President Kamala Harris on his SiriusXM show. Over the course of more than an hour, Stern praised her.
And when my staff asked questions about these actions and invited you to meet with them, you refused to meet, and you subsequently directed your team to stop all communications with my staff on this committee. So help me understand how we're going to be able to trust you to respond to Congress concerns if you're confirmed as ambassador to Jamaica, if what you've done to date is to stonewall questions that I have on behalf of this committee.
Thank you, Ranking Member Shaheen, for the question. I appreciate your concern for the agency. It's an important agency. And as I said to the chairman, I'm really proud of the work that we are doing there. We have made ourselves available to your team. I was really happy to be able to meet with your team. I see some of them behind you right now, from your Western Hemisphere expert to Naz and Amy and Mike and Mark. They were incredibly kind and had a lot of questions about USAGM. It's a difficult task to bring an agency to statutory minimum, and I leaned heavily on career civil servants who were at the agency to help figure out what that meant. And we're actually operating at a higher level than what they suggested. I think that we needed more people to do the job, and we're working really hard to make sure we continue to be efficient. If we have not been forthcoming with our time with your committee, I will apologize for that. I know that many members of our team have met with your staff, and I can think of 3 or 4 times that we've met with them already. And if that wasn't enough, then we can work to continue our open dialogue. I know that we have reached out recently and said, where can we find some common ground here on what you need so that we're providing it in a timely fashion, and we haven't heard back. I did say that I would make myself available to meet with you, and then never got a response from your team if that was open in your schedule.
If you didn't hear back from us, I'm sorry that happened. I hope you will commit to provide this committee any information that's requested if you're confirmed.
Yes, I will.
Donald Trump just blew up the peace talks taking place in Switzerland before they even began. He's destroyed any chance of these negotiations succeeding. He started to attack the Iranian leadership who was there to negotiate by saying he was going to kill them before they returned to Iran. He then said that the United States would take over the Strait of Hormuz and start charging a toll. This caused the Iranian leadership that was in Switzerland to lodge a formal protest against the United States. Iran made it very clear they will not be talking about the nuclear file at all at these discussions in Switzerland. Iran will only be discussing how the United States intends to restrain Israel to implement a full ceasefire in Lebanon as required by Article 1 of the Memorandum of Understanding, and to release all sanctions and provide all necessary waivers to Iran. The head of the IAEA wasn't even attending these talks in Switzerland. Then Donald Trump had Lindsey Graham and other MAGA stooges go on the various networks this morning to also threaten Iran and say that the United States would take over the Strait of Hormuz and start charging tolls. Lindsey Graham also told the people of Lebanon, don't you worry, help is on the way, the same message that Donald Trump told the Iranian.
He was very susceptible to flattery. And if you gave, and I noticed this in your interviews with him, you would throw out something like, your poll numbers, I've never seen anything like this. And
well, it's a definite technique.
It washes over him.
Yes, it's a technique. It always starts out, notice I call him in every interview, Mr. Trump. Now, this is before he was president, Mr. Trump.
That's intentional.
Oh, absolutely. Someone had asked me, said, why do you call him Mr. Trump? I said, because it loosens him up. He feels respected. He feels good about himself. Now he's going to roll. He's going to open up to me.
When you step back, this whole story is just peak modern politics. A friendship that worked perfectly fine in the wild world of entertainment completely fell apart under the pressure of the White House.
You think he's the same person that you interviewed now?
Yeah, I do. I think he's the same exact person. When I know of Donald and his relationship with his father, it sounds traumatic. It sounds like the father was very domineering. The father expected a lot of him. And the father, I don't know, there was military school. You read these drips and drabs and you go, wow, I can assure you he's been traumatized because, Donald
said he'd enthusiastically vote for her, and at one point, both the host and the candidate said out loud what Stern had clearly come to believe, that Donald Trump was unfit for office. The man who helped build Trump's public image using his own platform to help elect the woman running against him and calling Trump unfit. For Trump, that wasn't just political disagreement. That was betrayal, and he responded exactly the way the Stern tapes would predict, with no filter at all. Because here's where Trump loses it, and it's documented on the record. After that Harris interview, Trump went on his Truth Social platform and unloaded on Stern. He called him, and these are his words, a beta male, said Stern had made a fool of himself on his, quote, low-rated radio show, said he lobbed Harris softball questions, and then he added the part that always gives the game away. He claimed he had dropped Howard a long time ago, and that he'd been credited with very good judgment for it. Dropped him a long time ago. Think about that framing. This is a man who called into Stern's show for 17 years, who was at the guy's wedding, now trying to rewrite it so that he walked away. He saw through Stern first. It's the same move as the Iraq thing. Rewrite the past so you were always the one in control, and it wasn't a one-time thing. Around the same stretch, Trump went on Fox News on Gutfeld's show and trashed Stern again. He said Stern had gone woke, and that, quote, his ratings have gone down the tubes. He reminisced about how great Stern's show used to be, back when, in Trump's telling, he was on it for just about all of them. You can hear the wound in it. It's the sound of a guy who can't believe the friend who helped make him famous turned around and called him unfit for the most powerful job on earth. And that's a tell, isn't it? Same's with every critic we've ever covered. Trump doesn't shrug off Howard Stern. He can't. He goes after him, beta male, low-rated, woke, washed up, because the betrayal got to him. Because Stern, of all people, knows him. Stern has the tapes. Stern was there for 17 years of no filter. And there is no comeback for a man who has your entire unguarded self on a recording. So now, let me bring you to today. to what's happening around Donald Trump in the last 24 hours.
The Strait of Hormuz right now is that it is closed. Iran has shut down the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is able to move its oil tankers out from Karg Island, and it has been able to move out somewhere in the range of 20 to 30 million barrels. Meanwhile, the Strait of Hormuz remains closed to the United States and to other countries at this time. The Iranians also refused to pose for the photo op that J.D. Vance, Steve Witkoff, and Jared Kushner, who were in Switzerland on behalf of the United States, wanted. I've never seen the United States look so weak and pathetic on the international stage before. So what happened was there was a press conference that was taking place before the negotiations were set to take place in earnest. And at the same time, Donald Trump started threatening to kill and destroy Iran and kill the negotiators who were there in Switzerland. The United States was there in the room first, which is always a sign of weakness in the negotiation, waiting for Iran to show up. And then Iran's like, we're not going to take photos with J.D. Vance and Witkoff and them, so they can do it on their own. And so just the level of weakness to see the U.S. on the international stage. We're also getting a statement from MB Ghalibaf that was just released in response to Donald Trump's threats to kill him and to kill the entire Iranian negotiating team. Ghalibaf just wrote, "Don't they think to themselves that if their threats had any result, they wouldn't have reached today's desperation? We do not take the Americans' threats into account at all. It would be better for them to watch their statements carefully. Our armed forces are ready to respond to them in a different way. No matter how much they talk, it is we who act." This is what the United States has become on the world stage under the Trump regime, incredibly weak, and the Strait of Hormuz remains closed right now as a result of Israel continuing to strike inside of Lebanon, killing over 100 people in Lebanon, and it was innocent women, children, and people who were a lot of the casualties that have been there, by the way, in Lebanon. Meanwhile, Netanyahu says that he has no interest in ever leaving Lebanon. Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, says, nope, we're going to keep on blowing up Lebanon right now. And so Israel's saying, we don't care about your memorandum of understanding, Donald Trump. We're going to continue to move forward and continue our invasion of Lebanon. And here's what Donald Trump posted. Let's just go bring out the receipts. Trump writes, Iran must immediately stop their highly paid proxies in Lebanon from causing trouble. If they don't, we will hit Iran very hard again, just like we did last week, only harder. Donald J. Trump. This again, as the Strait of Hormuz is closed right now because of Israel strikes inside of Lebanon. And Donald Trump posted that right as the negotiations were supposed to take place in Switzerland. I mean, Donald Trump seems intent on causing a global depression, right, and destroying these negotiations. Donald Trump then called up state regime media, which calls itself Fox, and then Donald Trump told one of the Fox correspondents the following. He said, you close the Strait of Hormuz, you ain't gonna have a fucking country, Iran. You hear me? I mean, Donald Trump is so unhinged. Here's what he said. Let's play it.
President Trump tells Fox News he spoke with Iranian officials overnight and said, you close it and you won't have a country. He went on to tell these officials, you won't even make it back to your effing country. Now,
then Donald Trump told the Fox host, we're going to bomb the shit out of you. I'm going to blow the shit out of them. You understand? I mean, just think about Donald Trump. He's in Camp David right now, panicking around the room. The Strait of Hormuz is...
Because the whole theme of the Stern story, the gap between what Trump reveals and what Trump desperately wants buried, is playing out on the front pages right now, in the biggest way imaginable. There's a different archive at the center of American politics today. Not Howard Stern's tapes, the Epstein files. Here's where things stand as of today. Late last year, under enormous public pressure, Trump signed the Epstein Files Transparency Act into law, a law forcing the release of the government's files on the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. And the Justice Department has now released a massive trove, around 3.5 million pages of documents. But here's the story breaking today. According to CBS News and others reporting this afternoon, that's not the whole picture, not even close. because the DOJ has acknowledged it actually collected more than 6 million pages during its investigation, and it's only released about half of them. So the question everyone is now asking is, what's in the other 3 million pages? What's being held back? The Justice Department says the unreleased material is just duplicates or unrelated to Epstein or protected by legal privilege. That's their position, and it's worth stating fairly. But CBS News went through what was released and found troubling gaps, missing emails, questionable redactions. And this is the part that connects straight back to everything we've been talking about. Among the missing material are screen grabs of an Epstein email inbox from the early 2000s, with the sender and recipient names heavily redacted. That's the exact period when Epstein was in contact with Donald Trump through their New York and Palm Beach social circles. The same period investigators have flagged as when Epstein was recruiting underage girls. Now, Trump has repeatedly claimed he never even used email, and he has consistently, categorically denied any wrongdoing in connection with Epstein. The White House says he's been totally exonerated and points to the fact that he's the one who signed the transparency law in the first place. That's all real, and it belongs in the story. And to be complete about the documented record, because fairness demands the full picture, here's what's actually established versus what isn't. It's documented that Trump and Epstein knew each other socially for years. There are photos of them together, including at Mar-a-Lago in the 1990s, and archive footage of them partying together.
Panicking around the room, the Strait of Hormuz is closed. We're about to hit tank bottom on oil, and he's out there cursing to a Fox host. Here, play this clip.
An important point here is what the president is leaving on the table as it relates to the Strait of Hormuz. He says, we may take over the strait if we have to. I'll blow the S out of them.
Then Donald Trump said, you know this deal, this MOU, it's not even a deal at all. You see, it's an option. And after 60 days, I think I'm just going to go and return to blow the shit up out of them. This is what Donald Trump is saying this morning. And by the way, the optics of what's going on in Switzerland tells a very different story right now about the weakness of the United States. But let's play this clip.
And also, President Trump talked about the broader memorandum of understanding, indicating this is just a ceasefire extension. This is not the final deal with the Iranian regime. And the president says he holds the cards and maintains a variety of options if the Iranians don't make these serious commitments at the negotiating table. He said, I have a 60-day option and I can do whatever I want after that option. So again, President Trump
Then, pursuant to the memorandum of understanding, Iran is not required to completely give up enriched uranium. The MOU, if you want to look at the provision, specifically paragraph 8, talks about down blending, which, by the way, was in the JCPOA, although the JCPOA had enforcement mechanisms. So naturally, Iran's president, Pezeshkian, says we're not going to give up our right to enrichment. By the way, that's in the memorandum of understanding that they don't have to give up their right to enrichment. They said no nuclear weapons, but they can enrich. They just have to downgrade. I don't know, Donald and Jared Kushner and J.D. Vance. I don't know, maybe you want to know a little bit about the way nuclear material works. I don't know, before you go and you do these deals. Then Donald Trump says he better watch his mouth because we're going to take over the rest of the country. Here, let's play this clip.
It's also reacting to that. Take a listen.
We will not give up our right to enrichment, and they, too, will be forced to accept it. You all know what the so-called President of the United States was saying. He had made a complete 100-degree turn. He was saying that Iran must surrender unconditionally. Iran has no right to do this, it has no right to do that.
President Trump, during our call, responded directly to those comments by Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian. President Trump told Fox News he better watch his mouth, he better shape up, or we'll take over the rest of the country. And so clearly the president reacting directly to these comments from Iran's President Masoud.
As I noted before, then Donald Trump had Lindsey Graham show up, and Lindsey Graham said, this deal's going to fall apart, and then we're going to take over the Strait of Hormuz, and we're going to invade Iran, and then we're going to do this for Israel. That's what Americans want, for Israel, everybody. No, we want for America right now not to be in these catastrophic and unlawful wars. Here, play this clip.
I spent 4.5 hours with President Trump Friday. Here's what I think will happen next. If this deal fails, President Trump is going to take the Strait of Hormuz over by force. The United States will control the Strait of Hormuz. We'll charge a fee for all those who go through to pay for the operation. And we're going to expand the Abraham Accords in calendar year 2026. We're going to get Saudi Arabia to join the Abraham Accords, and which is the biggest change in 5,000 years in the Mideast. And if Iran contests control of the Strait of Hormuz by the United States, we'll obliterate them.
Also, Lindsey Graham keeps on fantasizing about Saudi Arabia and all of these countries joining the Abraham Accords with Israel. None of these countries want to engage in the Abraham Accords with Israel while Israel's engaged in genocide in Gaza and while they're blowing up Lebanon, Lindsey Graham. And then Lindsey Graham's like, everybody join with Israel, Arab nations. This catastrophic war that you and Netanyahu and Trump got us into pushed people further away from Israel's actually what's happened, Lindsey Graham. And then Lindsey Graham goes to the people of Lebanon. Help is on the way. Here, let me show you what he said. Let's play this clip.
To Saudi Arabia, now's the time to open negotiations yet again for you to expand the Abraham Accords, for you to join. I think this is going to happen in 2026, and it can't happen until Iran's in a box. If we get a deal, Iran will be in a box. If we don't get a deal, Iran will be in a box.
A batch of files released last year included flight records that allege Trump flew on Epstein's plane several times in the 1990s, which Trump has flatly denied, having previously insisted he was never on the plane or the island. There's the disputed birthday note. There's even a 2002 email in the files signed Love Melania with the names redacted, and the First Lady has acknowledged exchanging what she called casual correspondence with Maxwell. None of that by itself proves criminal wrongdoing, and Trump denies all of it. But you can see why the missing 3 million pages, the redacted inboxes, and the gaps in the record have so many people across the political spectrum. Because outrage over the abuse of children has never been a left or right issue, demanding to see everything. But do you see the through line? Do you see the contrast? For 17 years on Howard Stern's show, Donald Trump could not stop revealing himself. No filter, open book, say anything. And now, on the one archive he'd most like to control, suddenly it's all redactions, missing pages, legal privilege, and 3 million documents nobody outside the building has seen. The man who once couldn't keep a secret to save his life is now at the center of the most aggressive information suppression fight in recent memory. That's not me drawing the line. The story draws it itself, and we now have a remarkable window into just how desperate the White House has been to keep that second archive buried, because it's spelled out in detail in a major new book. Veteran reporters Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan, in their book on Trump's second term.
But Donald Trump said that if this deal falls apart, and he seems to be making it fall apart right now, that we are days away from global economic depression. That's not my words. That's what Donald Trump said when he was in Versailles and when he was at the G7 in France. Listen to what Wright says as he just kind of stutters and mutters. Here, let's play this clip.
But let me, the other question is what happens if it falls apart? You just said if it falls apart, we'll still see declining prices. But I want to play you something that President Trump said at the G7. He seems to have President Herbert Hoover on his mind. Take a listen.
The one president I did not want to be was the late, great Herbert Hoover. Rather than possibly going into a depression, rather than having your favorite president be Herbert Hoover, I was always the one I didn't want to be.
I mean, what he's saying there, and he has said a few different times, is that if we go back to a state of war with Iran, we face the risk of global depression. Is that not true?
Look, the president... No, I don't. Well, look, the president has been advised all along, despite the media proclamations, that there was enormous risk to energy flows to engage the Iranians on their nuclear program in a military fashion. But he simply was unwilling to leave to his successor in nuclear-armed Iran. There's just no greater risk to energy prices, to the economy of the world, than a nuclear-armed Iran. He knew he was going to drive up energy prices in the short run. he had the courage to take the action.
As I noted before, the Iranians said, we are not discussing anything of the nuclear file today. Today is just about Israel out of Lebanon. You remove sanctions from us. And also, how do we know that? The head of the IAEA wasn't even there. So we could just factually observe what's taking place, and we could factually observe what's going on in the room. J.D. Vance and Witkoff and Kushner looked like the three stooges there. I mean, they look like the most incompetent and unqualified people, because they are. They were thirsty for a photo with MB Ghalibaf, Foreign Minister Araghchi, and Iran's negotiating team. Iran's negotiating team was like, we're not taking these photos with you. And then the Trump regime wants to push out all this stuff to American regime media like we're somehow, like this is tough and this is America strong. No, this is America never being weaker, objectively, based on, I'm just giving you the receipts right here. It's why we need a healthy media diet. And I often get asked, Ben, where do you get your news from to do these presentations, to provide these fact-based news reports? And I tell people, you know this, that I use Ground News. Ground News is an app and a website that pulls in thousands of articles from around the world and organizes them to show you how it's being reported on the left, how it's being reported on the center, how it's being reported on the right, how it's being reported internationally, how different media outlets are framing stories differently, so I can distill it and give you some of the most objective reporting out there. You know, I'm watching the World Cup, for example. I just find it fascinating that the right wing refuses to post about how
Donald Trump would come on my show, and this is why he was great. There was no filter. I go, Donald, Angelina Jolie, she's one of the most beautiful actresses in the world. She's a 6, you know. Now, who says that? You know, most people, if they're having that thought, keep that pretty guarded. Not Donald. He was right into it. Ivanka Trump.
You know who's one of the great beauties of the world, according to everybody? And I helped create her? Who? Ivanka.
Most beautiful girl in the world. You know, I would marry her. These types of things.
Described top officials being so afraid of leaks about their handling of the Epstein files that they reportedly held damage control meetings in the Situation Room, the classified, secure heart of the White House, the room normally reserved for war planning, to figure out how to manage the scandal. According to the reporting on the book, Vice President Vance even floated an extraordinary idea, enlisting a friendly TV host to interview Epstein's imprisoned associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, as a kind of PR maneuver. And Trump's own reaction as described. He wanted the whole Epstein issue buried, and he was reportedly snapping at anyone who even brought it up, to the point where his own staff learned to avoid the subject around him and just worried about it among themselves. One of his own former officials, a prominent MAGA figure, reportedly compared the mess to a historic political scandal, saying it could become Trump's version of Iran-Contra. And before a major newspaper published a story tying Trump to an Epstein birthday note, Trump reportedly called the paper's top executives personally to try to kill it. And when it ran anyway, he filed a multi-billion-dollar libel lawsuit. Now sit with that contrast one more time, because it's staggering. The same man who spent 17 years telling Howard Stern anything, who could not stop talking, who treated a radio microphone like a confessional, is now, according to this reporting, holding war room meetings to bury a story, snapping at his own staff and suing newspapers. The open book slams shut, and the harder a man works to bury something, the more everyone wants to know what it is. And I have to handle this next part carefully and soberly because it's serious. Earlier this year, as part of this same Epstein file release, the DOJ put out notes from FBI interviews with a woman who alleges that Trump assaulted her decades ago when she was a minor, and that she was also a victim of Epstein. These documents had initially been missing from the release, and reporters caught the discrepancy. According to the reporting, including from the journalist who's broken much of the Epstein story over the years, investigators interviewed this woman multiple times and reportedly found her credible. I want to be very clear about the standard here because it matters.
Iran's been given a hero's welcome in Mexico, and how poorly they're being treated, the Iranian team here in the United States, by the Trump government. The people are showing love and the people are showing respect, but how the Trump government is constantly attacking the Iranian soccer team, or if you're internationally, football team, like no one on the right wing is reporting about it. And so I compare how the right wing's doing it, how the left wing's doing it, how the center is doing it, so I can just give you objective facts. PANICS. That's why Ground News has a dedicated blind spot feed. It's a personal favorite of mine, which highlights how different types of media are reporting on things. By the way, I believe in Ground News so much, I'm going to offer you 40% off the same Vantage plan that I use for my research. So just go click the link in the description or go to ground.news/MTN or scan the QR code up here. It's one of the biggest discounts they've ever offered. If you want to support this channel and get a clearer understanding of the world, try out Ground News. I want to get back to the reporting here as well, because I want to contrast what I showed you in the first half of this video to what J.D. Vance has been saying right now. So J.D. Vance, after the Iranian delegation naturally refused to shake his hand or take photo ops with him and Witkoff and Kushner, as Donald Trump is threatening to kill them, J.D. Vance says, the opening of the Strait of Hormuz and the ending of Iran's nuclear program, these things have already been accomplished. Really? Because the Strait of Hormuz is closed right now. And Iran has also made clear its weapons-grade nuclear program they will phase out, which they claim we never wanted that in the first place. But they are going to enrich. They're just going to downgrade and blend. You should go and read the JCPOA, JD. Here, play this clip of JD.
Diplomatic resolution to a host of issues that matter to the American people, but I think the world. The opening of the Strait of Hormuz, the ending of the Iranian nuclear program, all of these things have already been accomplished. The question before us now is how much more can we accomplish together? Can we turn over a new leaf? Can we change relations in the Middle East permanently? Or do we go back to doing things the old way, which is not our preference, but is certainly very much something that can't happen.
Then J.D. Vance said, what we're really trying to do here is transform the Middle East. Iran has been a driver of regional instabilities. You think this is a good way to negotiate, J.D.? To show up there begging, then say that Iran has been the main regional instability there? You think that's a good way? Now you want to promote peace this way? Okay. Great work, J.D. Off to a wonderful start. Here, play this clip.
Diplomatic resolution to a host of issues that matter to the American people, but I think the world. The opening of the Strait of Hormuz, the ending of the Iranian nuclear program, all of these things have already been accomplished. The question before us now is how much more can we accomplish together? Can we turn over a new leaf? Can we change relations in the Middle East?
Because Donald would come on my show. I mean, look.
Does it make you feel bad or good?
Well, look, I did not vote for Donald Trump. I go into great lengths in this book, and I think people will be interested in this. Hillary Clinton, you know, like in Moby Dick, I was chasing her. She was my obsession. I wanted to see Hillary Clinton win. And I thought if she had come on the show, the way I helped Donald was I let him come on and be a personality. Whether you liked him or not, people related to him as a human being.
And here's the part that should stay with you. That same gap, reveal versus conceal, is the whole story of this presidency right now. A man who couldn't keep a secret on the radio is now presiding over redacted files, missing emails, 3 million withheld pages, and a White House fighting to bury the one archive it can't laugh off. The Stern tapes told you, decades ago, who Donald Trump is when he isn't being careful. The fight over the Epstein files is what happens when a man like that finally has something he's truly desperate to keep careful about. Howard Stern kept the receipts. The country is just now reading them. Hey, if you made it all the way here with me, thank you, genuinely. You're the entire reason this channel exists, and on a heavy story like this one, I don't take a second of your trust for granted. We're independent here, no giant networks sitting on top of us, no corporate bosses deciding what we're allowed to say. It's just us doing the digging, going through the actual reporting, checking the sources, and being careful to separate what's proven from what's alleged, because on a story this serious, that distinction matters more than ever. Everything in this breakdown came from real reporting. ABC's interviews with Stern, The Hill on Trump's responses, CBS News and others on today's Epstein file revelations, NBC on Obama. You can check every piece of it. So if this gave you a clearer picture, hit that like button right now. 1 second, and it genuinely helps us beat the algorithm. Subscribe if you're not already, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next one, because with this administration, believe me, there's always a next one, usually by tomorrow. And share this with one person. Just one. Somebody who needs to see it. That's how independent voices win, one share at a time. And get in the comments, but keep it thoughtful on this one because of the subject matter. Tell me, do you think the Stern tapes still matter all these years later? Or is it fair to call them dated radio banter? I read every single one of these. Let's talk about it down there. This has been your independent breakdown of the story they'd rather you scroll right past. Stay sharp out there, stay loud, and I'll see you in the next one.